I have obviously also been working in the corporate world myself and have been in completely drained environments and leaving work and being totally exhausted, running home and being a mom and doing all those things. And I was like, this is just not good enough. This, there is, when you know that there are so many tools out there and also a lot of science behind work environments and how they, instead of being draining places for people to be many hours a day, can actually be a place where plants can live. Like there's enough natural light and there's enough good air and there's good and stimulating colors and materials and flow and inviting and telling a story when that is possible, which is at our fingertips.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition. Ooh, it feels so good to say that here in round 2 of this new evolution of the LLP that my co-host to my left, Tracy Allen, and I have just launched last week, and we are coming in here with one of our favorite conscious leadership guests. But before we introduce her today, Tracy, how you feeling about being back for round 2?
I'm very excited, and I'm very excited about our guest. It's right in alignment with what we talk about all the time. So I'm so excited to have her share. And especially me being in real estate, this is near and dear to my heart where I am today in my position. So I'm super excited to hear about what she's going to talk about today.
Yes, this is why we know this interview is going to bring the heat here in the summer of the LLP. As we mentioned, this is one of our all-time favorite guests. That's right, folks. She has been here before, but now she's coming back right off the heels of launching her first book. I'd love to introduce you to my friend, my client, and a futurist. She had just written The Future of Work in this new book, Space That Speaks. I was just at her launch event last Thursday, sitting in a space that she had actually co-created herself. And I can't wait for her to speak to all of what went into that human-centric design that I got to witness and experience. Mette Johansen Keating, welcome back to the show and congrats on being an author. We are so excited to celebrate this book and having you back. Thank you for being back.
Well, I'm so thrilled. Thank you so much for having me on the show and being with two such strong leaders as both of you guys. I am so thrilled that there's teams of people out there that also are acknowledging how important it is to think of space, people, strategies in a completely different way if you want to be at the forefront and actually attract and retain talents and making them as productive as possible and being engaged and inspired. So thank you so much for having me on.
So Mette is the founder of MetteSpace. This is a company that focuses on human-centric design. The first place I'd love for us to start off our audience is by plugging them in to this mission that you are on with MetteSpace. What inspired you going on this human-centric design mission in the first place? And then what has inspired you to write this playbook that really does such a phenomenal job of giving us a blueprint of what we believe, Tracy and I, are absolutely going to be the table stakes for anybody looking to hold office space for their people's creativity in business. So tell us a little bit about the backstory here first in terms of what set you on this mission in the first place.
Well, the mission started long ago, and I have obviously also been working in the corporate world myself and have been in completely drained environments and leaving work and being totally exhausted, running home and being a mom and doing all those things. And I was like, this is just not good enough. There is, when you know that there are so many tools out there and now also a lot of science behind work environments and how they, instead of being draining places for people to be many hours a day, can actually be a place for where plants can live. Like there's enough natural light and there's enough good air and there's good and stimulating colors and materials and flow and inviting and telling a story. When that is possible, which is at our fingertips, if you dive into it, then why not? And my mission is really to make people happy and productive at work. It's really that simple. So I know what it takes to create that stage, if you will, for people to be able to flourish at work and the places supporting the activities that you need to do in the space by asking the right questions to the people what they need. So that is my mission, and I think COVID taught us a lot. And this book was actually written before COVID, but then I felt, you know what, the market is getting ready for the philosophy that I have and have been doing for the last 15 years here in Canada, but also in Europe and the States. But I wanted to bring it out to a larger audience. It has typically been the tech industry that knows and trying to get talent. They've known it for a longer time. Like, what do people need to be productive? Even developers and whatever they need. So they're at the forefront. But I think the market, the timing is ready to get to a bigger audience, and I think the book will help get this message up to the C-level and human-centered leaders that actually have people working for them, especially with all the AI coming in. I'm thrilled about AI. But the more AI a company has and uses, which is great for making people more efficient at certain things, the more it actually opens up for creativity, because you're going to be doing different things at the office. You're not going to be punching in numbers so much anymore, because we're going to have AI doing a lot of those things. So I think we need to think about the space from a human side, like we're humans. So we know we get affected by our surroundings. So tapping into that is a huge strategy decision for companies.
It's so aligned, obviously, with why we've pivoted this podcast in the direction of conscious leadership. Whether it's human-centric office space design or human-centric leadership best practices, it's all coming into alignment with this same notion, right? Which is, if we really want to co-create the best business outcomes, we have to meet our people where they're at as human beings. And the difference between a human being and a human doing, like AI is coming up the backside to replace us on, right? It's just all of that in terms of the productivity stuff. Yeah, human beings have needs. And when those needs are met by the leaders that are lucky enough and privileged enough to have their talent, then that's when you actually can set that human being up to be able to create or innovate or adapt into, right? Like the best creative business solutions. This is why we all in this room believe that these are going to be the table stakes for our leadership development, is that we learn to be conscious in the way that we approach our humans in this co-creative way, right? Understanding what their needs are, and then understanding that when we meet those needs, this is where everybody will get to thrive, including our businesses. Because I think of that our businesses is kind of like living entities themselves that have needs, but I think this is why Tracy and I are so excited to talk to you about this, in terms of, she comes from the space and place of being head of real estate for Nokia, and she sees where all of this has been at, right? As you stepped into this role, Trace, and understanding where we need to go, especially a company that has such a big impact from a tech perspective. Neuroarchitecture, and I have to refer to this term because it's so closely aligned with our mindset strategy architecture. This is basically the tee up for you, is us teaching leaders to address their people in these human-centric ways, understanding what their people need emotionally, because yes, your nervous system fuels your performance. And it's kind of the same thing that you're talking about in your book, right? There are certain aspects of your design that can intentionally be created or architected to be able to meet those specific needs that human beings require to thrive in high performance ways. Can you speak to some of that in regards to just, what do you mean? Like, what aspects can a leader be super conscious and intentional about integrating? Let's say if they are trying to make sure that the environment encourages creativity or trust. So what are your thoughts in terms of all of what Mette is referencing here? Do you see this evolution happening in real time in our corporate conditions?
I think we give it lots of thought. Like, I know that's something that I'm really consciously thinking about. And we are, creating some new spaces right now. And that's a big struggle inside big corps, especially after COVID. People want the flexibility, but yet leaders want them back at work. So it's finding that balance. And the question I always try to come back to is, as an employee, what's going to make me want to go back? Why? The why factor, like, what am I going to get out of that? Not just what the company wants to get out of that, but what am I personally as a human being going to get out of that? So it has to be better than what we have at home, right? To drive and to commute into work, you have to have a space or people or a combination of that allows you to be creative, that allows you the comfort of your home, the efficiencies that you have at home, being close to certain, amenities. And when you go into a workspace, you're looking for that. So when I try to look at it from, the employee's perspective, I try to see, how do I make it better than what they have at home? Because that has to be the benchmark that we have now today. It can't be just, you need to come back to work because I said you need to come back to work because I want to see you at your desk. It's not good enough anymore, right? So how do we create that where people want to get in their car and drive an hour, go to work because the space is beautiful, because my colleagues are there, because there's wonderful amenities, because I can collaborate and I can be creative and I can have space to do my work? That has to be the new benchmark, right? So I'm giving that a lot of thought in my space because that's where I'm at. But it's not easy to get everybody going in that direction, right? But that's why leaders need to get really intentional about this as a question to themselves, but more about the why are they doing this? Why do they want people back to work? Because if it's just because you want to see people back at work, because you want to see them working, wrong answer. Let's think of that again. Because you have to think about your people. Like, why is it that they're going to get in their car and commute an hour or 2 hours? It has to be something better. And that's really, like, I think we go back to conscious leadership, is being intentional about why we're making these choices. Why do I want this to be the next decision I make? Is it for the right reasons? Because that's what conscious leadership is all about. And it's about making those choices, right? And so figuring out the alignment, the values, and then bringing that to the workplace is going to be really important when we're making these kinds of decisions. So I'm super excited about what Mette is doing because it's really in my space and I love that. And I'm leading the path for me inside my own, little box that I can in Nokia. And we're really I am driving a lot of that because, as big companies, we have standards to do things, and I want to move that. I want to shape that. I want to bring that to the next level after COVID, because I think it's going to be really, really important. And again, it comes back to, what's in it for the employee at the end of the day. They have to feel good about the decision they make when they go to work in the morning. And when they leave everything behind, their kids, their flexibility, there has to be something there for them. It can't be just company wants something, right? So,
Mette, how do we engage these leaders at that elevation of consciousness? I got to imagine that you got to put on your coach's hat for a second when you're talking to these leaders who possibly don't think so intentionally in the ways that Tracy's describing. Where would you even begin with leaders out there who are listening to this, trying to figure out how to get to that elevation?
Well, I think actually that's kind of the exciting part, because it does provoke how people have, a lot of leaders have thought about space, but it is such a big opportunity. It's really, really a big opportunity that you can tap into, especially with when you think about the workforce, how it's changing. And we know I have kids that are out working, and I know exactly what they're looking for, and they want to go to the office actually for certain things. So what I encourage leaders to do is look at their spaces and destination. Because when we are going to a destination, we actually don't mind going for a longer commute if you're going to a destination. Like look for people that are going to concerts and games and whatever. Not doing it every day necessarily, but having like Tracy's saying, like you want to make them feel like if they're calling in on a screen, they're missing out being in the room. So how do you make it attractive enough to be in the room and get that human connection that we can't replace? We can never replace that human connection. And especially if you have younger people that are looking for mentorships and looking to learn, leaders that also needs to overhear conversations and being present. It's crucial for a business. So you need to make people feel, and I think this starts from before you come into the space, even having leaders like Tracy wanting to go this route matters. If you know as an employer that your leadership acknowledges you as a human being first, that makes you feel I matter. They want me here. I trust that they're going to try to do to make me feel part of something. And if you make it feel part of, everybody wants to be part of a winning team. Why not? Then you get more engaged. You get to know your colleagues over maybe lunches together, and you just become a team. And I see this happening out in workspaces. You come in and you just hear the buzzing of people talking and eating and being together. So that's part of the making it a destination, and have that intention as the leader. You need to kind of show up as the leader too, and saying, this is what I want. And then it kind of funnels down organically because people want to be part of that. So the story that you want to show, like I feel that a space actually creates a story. Like what we're doing with Recruit and Kobo, they were super intentional about what they wanted the space to be after COVID. And they actually made the space smaller, but with full intention of what they wanted people to get out of coming to work. And not every day, but when they went in, it served that purpose of the activities that they needed to make. But it needs to come from the top down.
Yeah, so the leader needs to be conscious of why the team has a workspace, what the benefits are to coming back into that workspace, and what the needs of the human beings in that workspace responsible for that aspect of production are also going to require, so that they actually feel that they are set up to do their best work. I know in your book you talk about this in terms of neuroarchitecture, and I have to refer to this term because it's so closely aligned with our mindset strategy architecture. You know, this is basically the tee up for you as us teaching leaders to address their people in these human-centric ways, understanding what their people need emotionally, because yes, your nervous system fuels your performance. And it's kind of the same thing that you're talking about in your book, right? There are certain aspects of your design that can intentionally be created or architected to be able to meet those specific needs that human beings require to thrive in high performance ways. Can you speak to some of that in regards to just, what do you mean? Like, what aspects can a leader be super conscious and intentional about integrating? Let's say if they are trying to make sure that the environment encourages creativity or trust. What are some of
Yeah.
the what are some of the ways that they can actually assert that intentionally into their conditions?
Yeah, I think, and now we have so much research behind us, but also figuring out what is the sort of the blueprint of your staff and what
Hmm.
functions do they need to do.
Hmm.
Um, Introvert, extrovert, hyper, less hyper. Like you need to think about like because it's different for different departments that you have,
Hmm.
and figuring out, especially like with developers or the introvert, like they can't be in a very loud environment necessarily. We've done work with people what they acknowledged. What do my staff? What are they? What kind of people are they, and how can we support them in their roles? So we would do like some deep dive rooms for super introverted developers, for example, that couldn't be disturbed. So just figuring out what do they look like and what do they need on a human level, like your sales force versus your marketing department, okay, your
Bookkeepers?
financial and like
Yeah.
like this there are different needs for different
Hmm.
places.
Hmm.
And then if you have certain teams that need require certain more calm areas, then you create
Hmm.
more calm areas in your finishes, in the layouts, and making sure people are not out in the open space necessarily. So you can, by figuring out what workforce you have and the needs that they have, then you can tailor it.
Yeah,
So
that's very in alignment with what we talk about too, right? When we're actually trying to tee our people up, is like just go to your people empathetically, right? Like showing that you care to listen to what it is that they have to say about their job, their responsibilities, and what would ultimately make that easier or more accessible or flow better. Like going to your people and asking all these kinds of curious questions is what a conscious leader needs to do, regardless of what it is that they're trying to curate in terms of a solution. There's something very
yeah,
powerful about that too. Not only do they feel that you care, but they see evidence of the fact that you care about co-creating an environment where they're going to do their best work. It shows that you care as their leader to support them in those efforts. I think that
yeah,
person's going to want to come back to the office and work in that space if you've engaged them at that human-centric depth,
yeah,
right? That's got to be part
yeah.
of the formula as well, is actually taking the time to go to your people and ask them these curious questions.
Absolutely. And then the leaders have to listen.
Mhm.
I also get sometimes leaders like, oh, but I can't cater to each the individual person because that's
Mhm.
also like now we're being too sort of
Oversimplified.
individual,
Mm.
yeah, or like catering to
Mhm.
everybody.
Everybody.
Mhm.
But you have to kind of look at it as what is the mission of the company too,
Mhm.
and how do you make all these subcultures of the different departments work for that overall mission that your
Mhm.
company has.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And I think it also comes back to like co-creation as well, right? So having your people provide feedback around what they're looking for helps it bring it to something that they've now been part of, right? They see little things that you've incorporated that they've asked for. I mean, how they feel heard, right? And it helps
Mhm.
like with that whole process of them being part of this whole creation, right? Kind of bouncing back on the co-creation and feeling part of like the solution. And I think, Mette, you've talked about that where you've done certain things in a building where you've taken from the people in the building to create something together that then becomes this kind of staple where people congregate, where they know that they have been part of, and I think you have some great examples of that, which I think is like such a powerful kind of element you can bring to the workspace, which you don't see in a lot of places. You go, it's very,
Cookie
yeah.
cutter.
yeah,
I think what is crucial is that yes, people have values, they have certain identity, but sometimes it's just like the value is like printed up, but it's in maybe the boardroom or something. This
yeah,
is our values, but they're
Mhm.
not being lived out in the space. So you need to
Mhm.
kind of find ways to how can we make this part of our activities or what we are about, and we show people in the environment, that they're part of it. And this could actually be a really fun exercise. I mean, the simple one is like being part of naming the rooms, and why are we naming those, or why are those rooms, why is that particularly important for us as a company, that we're naming them after different mountains or different subway stations or whatever it is. It has to be something, not just because the CEO is a hiker or whatever. Like, it has to be something that is meaningful to the people.
The collective.
And one of the clients that I actually also got a new strong woman leader is a company called Vega. It's a large German, they do safety, something not very exciting, sort of like safety for roller coasters and things like that. But they had a lot of super bright people working for them, and we were doing the Toronto office, and they wanted to do their values that she actually wanted to bring out in the complete, like the whole workforce. And they were curiosity, simplicity, connectivity, and humanity. So those were like the 4 pieces. We want the company to be about that. So how do we bring that into the physical space and to some activities that these people, this was something that was going to roll out. It wasn't just like okay, now we do this, but it was something that's going to be an activity, like a weekly, something that they were actually going to be working at, being better at internally. So what we did, like, for example, with the curiosity, it was like we had sort of like, we created like a library where people were bringing in books that were meaningful to these people in the Toronto office. And they would start to get to know, be inspired by different things, but also get to know a little bit about, like, I'm really into gardening. Like, I'm really into sort of, so you start getting some conversations going. And then you start to get to know each other better, and then you just have a bit of belonging to your coworkers that you hopefully want to create great things with at work. So it's like kind of you ended up showing up in a different way, and you feel like a belonging. So it's and this is what I'm encouraging at the top level. What are you trying to create in terms of space and company, because you need to compete, Kathy. There's going to be competition to get the talents.
So what are you seeing in terms of predictions? Because I know part of your thesis here required that you're doing research into the trends, and are the trends here? Are they coming? Like, how quickly is this going to evolve? We're saying this is the future of work, which we all are definitely in consensus with, but what are you seeing and believing in terms of how quickly that evolution is going to play out? Because you're right, the pandemic was a major injection of awareness into our consciousness about the importance of these things, right? But what do you believe is going to be the arrival of said future of work? What are we looking at here? Because I know for sure we've got a lot of uncertainty right now, and the AI disruption has already happened. These future generations are right behind our back shoulder. So
yeah, no, I mean, in the workplace that I'm in, it's already happening. Because most of the companies I work with are they have maybe some have more younger leaders, but they're also acknowledging wisdom and listening to higher levels. But I think AI, it's already here. It's so work with it. Even in my industry, there's a lot of things happening, and we're using AI in our work because there's some simple tasks that, like, there's software now that we can get everything blown up into 3D pretty quickly, and get many different iterations of things much faster. But it also opens up more for creativity, which is what's going to happen in most companies. Like, I've been to some conferences. It's mind-blowing what is happening. So when staff are looking, I think they're looking for more futuristic companies that are also, but I think, as I said before, the more AI is coming in, the more human we need. So I think it's an opportunity for companies to look at the more human, because that's what's going to attract the people that you want to have working for you now and in the future. And in terms of for in my industry, like smart buildings is already there. Like they're going to be measuring also the temperature and who's using which rooms, and how do you get, like what we think a lot about, like where's the sunlight and where's, like, so the functionality, the heating, the lighting and all that is going to be part of smart buildings, so we don't use as much power. But what is the message that you're giving people that are in the space? Smart building doesn't cover that quite yet, or it probably will never, because it's a human touch that you need to bring in to it. So, but the future is already here.
I was hoping you were going to say that. Tracy, do you agree from what you're seeing on the corporate side of things? You think this has arrived? Do you think these are becoming the table stakes? Because I know, like, being in a tech business, it's all about adaptation and innovation right about now. And AI is only accelerating that more and more every single day. So surely that means that our spaces are going to require and demand this type of thriving experience for our creativity, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think I liked what Mette kind of talked about earlier around even just the lab spaces, which is really huge for us in terms of tech, and being really intentional about what they need. And I think I look at, you know, what we have done, and a lot of our labs are quite old. And yeah, like there's so much work there to be done to allow the people working in those labs to actually, if you can create something that, you know, allows them to spend more time on more strategic, you know, tasks, as opposed to like keeping, you know, the heat down over here, the coolers over here, like, and there's just so many things of trying to keep it together. I think that by having that space that really just allows the people to have that creativity or strategic vision, that, you know, where they're spending more time on strategic things, will allow that to come through, right? And I think that's going to be really, really important. I think one of the questions that I have for Mette is like, what are the 3 questions as leaders to help them kind of tap into this, and to make sure to do kind of a level check on, are they doing the right things and thinking about their space in the right way? Because I think that's important to leave our leaders with that. Like, what, you know, as we talk about conscious leadership, are they being, you know, intentional, and have they asked themselves the right questions to be able to gauge where they are in terms of the spectrum of, you know, this whole space, you know, evolution that we're talking about in terms of workforce strategy.
Yeah, we've talked about values, we've talked about needs, right? We've talked about just where the world is at and going to be, certainly in a more and more accelerated fashion each day. But yeah, what are 3 great questions to tee up a leader listening?
Yeah, I think like what you said, like what is the intent of this, but how well do I really know so the blueprint of the people, even the leaders that are leading people, how well do I really know what they actually need? And listen to that feedback. What I also would like to, because something like AV technology is often something that it's like, oh, it comes later in the product. Right now, it's like, it's way up front, because the way that AV and technology are working in a space, it has to be just a plug and play. It has to be something you don't even think about when you're coming into the space. So asking yourself early on, like what, and investigate, because it's going so fast out there. So you need to have teams that are just on this with what's out there with AI, what can be used, first of all, but also the whole technology, and it needs to be just the plug and play. The smart buildings should hopefully be able to control the cooling and the heating, and making the space for if you have a lab, making sure that it's not something people have to worry about.
Right.
It needs to be just something that just functions. So you open up for the creativity and the brain power that everybody's trying to tap into. And then really just digging into what are the values, what signals do we want to say to bring out why do we exist?
Mm-hmm.
Do people know why they're doing the work that they're doing? Like tapping into the product, the service. I actually had over COVID, I had a talk with somebody working for the health department, Ontario Health Department,
Mm-hmm.
and their task was figuring out have the best route of the ambulances in Ontario. And for most people, it was just kind of like a map thing and technology, and they're just kind of like, but I'm like, oh my God, you guys are saving lives. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to tap into bring out the why you exist. And like Nokia, like why should people come and work there? Like what are you bringing? What is the product you're bringing out? So I would encourage the leaders to kind of take a step back and look at the values and how can they make everybody feel that in a space, be part of the design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what
So
really
those 3 questions.
brings it to life. And of course, I'm sure that our leaders are going to have more than 3 questions, but we don't want to spoil too much because we want you to go out and actually get the book, Space That Speaks, Mette Johansen Keating. It's on Amazon, I believe in all major bookstores too. We're definitely going to leave some links in the show notes so that you can easily access where to find the book. But if people want to carry on with this dialogue, this conscious conversation with you, Mette, where would you like them to reach out and find you?
I think they should come into my my website because it actually shows different programs that we're doing, and I'm also promoting some Bono work. We're picking out some companies that where people don't have choices; they have to be in certain places, and we like to give back to some of those. But go to my website, mettespace.com or mette.space. We also and there you can see a lot more of what we offer in terms of programs.
And I definitely think if you're curious to see what some of these incredible 2.0 workspaces look like, she's got a Instagram. Is it MetteSpace? I think it's at MetteSpace
yeah,
on Instagram.
yeah.
She's got some beautiful videos. She's given some tours of some of these beautiful spaces that she curated and co-created. So definitely go check that out too. Tracy, any final thoughts for our audience today on this whole conscious leadership as it pertains to human-centric design topic?
Well, I think one last point I'll make, which I think we kind of touched on it, but one thing that I think is really important is around how do we want people to feel when they're in the workspace, the emotions we want from them. And I think that is really, really important and something that I've been thinking about as we're on our journey in terms of creating new spaces is around how do I want the employees of Nokia to feel when they come into the workspace and really kind of, because that's where you say, right? That's where our power and our performance is fueled. So really being able to just be more than a workspace. And how do we want our people to walk in and feel and then connect? So I think, Mette gave us so much to talk about, and I'm super excited. I got my book. Sorry, I got my book. I'm going to be reading that, and I'm
for the doc.
excited about that. So that will be, this weekend we'll be going through that. So thank you so much, Mette. I think your work is, just so impactful to people, and it really kind of aligns with what Susan and I have been talking about for a few years, and it's just wonderful to have you here. So I hope everybody gets out there and takes a look at that book, and hopefully we've, inspired some of the leaders to take a look at some of the questions they're asking when they are creating spaces so that, we're empowering them to take it maybe a little differently and look at it a little bit differently to really kind of, cater to what our people are looking for in terms of bringing them back to work and creating nice spaces for them to be inspired and engaged with their colleagues. So thanks, Mette.
Well, thank you both. This was amazing. And this is a conversation that continues. So keep at it.
Never
and
ends.
great work.
And we definitely know that this is just getting started, this party, because this is ultimately an extension of what I created this whole 2.0 human-centric leadership methodology around, right? It's all about understanding that Yeah, there's such a backstory and such a history of us going to work and needing to survive because of the conditions that we were in, because of some of the old school 1.0 fear-based methods of our predecessors and leaders, right? So it's how invigorating and energizing and exciting is it to think that we can actually collaboratively co-create in these human-centric ways work conditions where people get the opportunity to thrive, right? Like you said at the top of the show, Trace, we leave our families, we leave our homes. Like, give us a destination, Mette said, that we actually look forward to getting into every single day for the purposes of creating, which at the end of the day is what human beings are required for in the context of work. And that's never going to change, right? But how exciting is it that we get to have conversations like this in 2025? That give us the opportunity to empower the leaders listening as to, yeah, just all the cool things that you can do tactically, strategically in your architecture to really be a part of that legacy. Because I really believe that's what conscious leadership means to all of us sitting on this mic today, right? We were born and given these superpowers in these contexts for these reasons, is that we all believe that this is the first generation of leaders that's actually going to make purpose-driven leadership the thing in terms of how we all get to go to work every single day and thrive. So I am so excited for our folks to get out and read this book, this playbook for just that. I'm really excited to keep this conversation going with you, Mette, with you, Tracy, and our future conscious leadership guests that we're going to have coming on through here at the LLP this summer. We are ourselves in the year of co-creation, and that means that you, our listeners, you know you're our why factor. This is why we get so excited and inspired to co-create on this mic in new ways like we are here today. But please send us your feedback. We want to hear from you. We want to meet you where you're at in your needs in terms of what you want to learn about or what you want us to dig into. There's no topic that is off this conscious leadership table this summer. You heard it from Tracy and I last week when we launched this thing. So please, please, please remember to send your feedback to me, Susan at elitehighperformance.com. Spread this episode as far and wide as you can. Be a part of this mission to help us change the way this game is being played consciously. Share it with a friend, share it with your tribe, share it with your teams at work. And definitely head on over to the website, elitehighperformance.com, for any other interest in anything else, Leadership 2.0. I'm even going to have Mette's book on there very shortly, so it'll make it easier for people to access there too. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this latest chapter here at the LLP. We told you we were bringing this heat. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you right back here next week.